Hello lads, welcome to the Econ Section 1 review. This video is part of a larger series of videos covering everything that you need to know about the AcDec curriculum. Head on over to our YouTube homepage and look through the playlist to explore all the topics you'll need to review for your AcDec competition. And if you like what we're doing here over at AcDec lads, please give that sub button a little tap for your boys. It's free and you can always change your mind later. Now keep in mind that these videos are only a review, and we highly recommend that you look through your review material to properly prepare you for your AcDec competitions. Now, as we get into the economics, the section 1 isn't too big of a problem, and it's only like 2 pages, so don't spend too much time reviewing this section, and honestly, you'll be completely fine here. So with that, lads, let's get right into it. So what is economics? Economics is essentially the study about how people spend their monies. That's essentially a social behavior and how people allocate their resources amongst one another. This includes basic things such as goods and services, and overall helps a society function. So there are a couple of assumptions that we take into consideration when we look at surface level economics. And one of the biggest assumptions that we make is the problem of scarcity. Now, human desires are insatiable. I mean, if it were up to me, I would take as much money as I want to get anything I really wanted. With resources being limited, it's important that humans allocate these resources and handle them properly. Another assumption that we can make is something called an opportunity cost. And it's essentially what you have to give up in order to attain what you want. One of the most basic examples is the amount of time you have after coming home from school. You can spend some time on leisure, such as watching Netflix, and some time towards studying. However, you can't do both of these things properly, at least, at the same time. The more time you allocate toward Netflix, the less time you have to prepare for your exams. And with that, an opportunity cost is coming into play. Within opportunity costs, this idea of giving up something in order to gain something is called a trade-off, which always comes at an expense. Another assumption that we make is the idea of trade. A trade is the benefit of two parties with consent. Essentially, two parties can benefit off each other if they have different interests. For example, an artist and an illustrator both have different talents, and yet when writing a book, they both depend on each other to create a cohesive product that they can make together. Two parties with different interests are both able to benefit. Another basic assumption in the field of economics is the idea of rationality, which characterizes consumers in the market. Essentially, if I was going to the supermarket, I would use rationality to decide what type of milk I want to get. Looking on the shelves, I use rationality to decide, alright, I don't want chocolate milk, so that's not what my goal will be. I also, using rationality, look at the expiry dates to look for the most value I can get out of my milk. If I see a milk that could expire earlier as opposed to the other milk, I would get the milk that would obviously expire much later. With these basic assumptions of economics, we can start to create models on how people are behaving in a market. Models are exactly what they sound like. It's just charts and graphs that depict what's happening in a market and how people are behaving. Two important things that often show up on economics, especially in section 1, are two ideas called positive economics and normative economics. Positive economics are essentially arguments brought up that are completely evidenced and data-based to show something that happens. For example, like if this happens, then that will happen. Normative economics, on the other hand, are quite opinion-based and tells you what should be happening. It uses value judgments on various different possible arguments to try to convince you or whatever party that the argument is aimed for to sway their opinion in a certain way. For example, if we were to look at the problem of minimum wage and the idea of increasing it, positive economics would show you all the facts. It would say, oh yeah, raising the minimum wage could help so many minimum wage workers to reach them out of poverty, which is, a numerical fact that we can show on a graph. However, positive economics can also show us that it could decline businesses and would let off a lot of workers because the businesses would no longer be able to support so many employees. Where normative economics could come in saying, well, would this really benefit society? Would increasing the minimum wage with all of these losses and gains really have a positive impact to society? And with these several value-based arguments on saying it would benefit or it would not benefit is something that politicians would use normative economics for, to convince and create arguments on their side. That's a pretty basic example, but that's the most you would need to know for positive and normative economics. Finally, we can look at something called a Pareto efficiency. Now, if you were to look at this graph, you can see that there's a certain line that crosses between certain two resources. The point of Pareto efficiency is an attempt to maximize the allocation of resources. Say, for example, if you had 100 cookies and 10 people, it would be Pareto efficient to have each person get 10 cookies. However, which is something really interesting, is that it would also be Pareto efficient to have one person get 91 cookies and the other 9 people to have only 1 cookie. The idea of Pareto efficiency is that we're using all the resources and allocating them to the fullest, not wasting anything. If we were to waste, say, even 1 cookie, and while even every person would end up getting at least 1 cookie is not being given to a person, then it's not Pareto efficient because we're not using up all of our resources. So pretty much, as long as everything is being used and distribution and inequality doesn't matter, then we could consider that example Pareto efficient. Wrapping this up, we can talk about micro and macroeconomics. Microeconomics is essentially the study of a specific and small-scale markets. While many would say it's a study of individual economics and the choices individuals make, which is quite true, it's more about the study about how individuals interact with smaller markets. They both share characteristics of human behavior, yet the only notable difference is the separation of scale. In this video, we covered the definition of economics, basic assumptions of economics such as scarcity, opportunity costs, and trade-offs, and we covered Pareto efficiency, as well as the difference between micro and macroeconomics. Now, you've gone through all of economics section 1. Nice. Thank you for watching, and please, if you liked the video, give us a like. We really appreciate those. That's it, guys. Bye.